Welcome back. You're watching KTN. Well, today President William Ruto is scheduled to deliver his State of the Nation address during a joint sitting of Parliament today at 2 p.m. And I have in studio with me is Ken Gishinga, who is a chief economist at Mentoria Economics, and we have Dismas Mokua, who is a political analyst. We're also expecting Kevin Osido, who is a governance expert, to join us, and I'm sure he'll be with us in a short moment. And I know before we took a short break, we were talking about affordable housing, and I might have opened a Pandora's box, and Ken really wants to give his thoughts around that area, because in your thoughts, there's something good for the Kenyans there, but on this end, we were asking questions of how is that trickling down to helping Kenyans. But more than this, I think we were talking about unemployment. And you did mention, Dismas, creation of jobs in the international market. And the question I think I posed is, how is that workable for every other Kenyan? You talked about the issue of languages. How many of these Kenyans have the languages for these specific countries? How well will they survive? I mean, is there another way to create employment other than just, we're talking about international, but then wouldn't it be better to create employment locally? I just want to hear from you, Ken Gishinga.
Dismas had said, instead of young people sitting under mango trees, it's important for them to go to the global economy and get good jobs. Dismas wants us to believe that the jobs available are maybe as a software engineer at Microsoft or a fashion designer in New York. Only 1% of Kenyans are doing those jobs. The vast majority are maids in Saudi Arabia. They are watchmen in Qatar. In fact, I'm told when you land at Hamad Airport, almost you can actually talk Kiswahili, because most of the people cleaning the airport. So it's menial jobs. So first of all, that's a fact that those high quality jobs, only 1% are enjoying them. But more importantly, even in those countries, they are closing down their borders, because the issue of unemployment in those countries is very problematic. In America, as we speak, there's an American senator who's putting a proposal to remove all H-1B visas for foreign workers. This is going to remove any foreign worker in America. If you go to Germany, remember last time we had a huge diplomatic scare with Germany when we said Kenyans will be sent there, and they had to correct that communication. In fact, the political party there, the Alternative for Deutschland, a very far-right party, is gaining ground because of pushing against anti-immigrants. So I think that whole idea that our economic strategy is about sending people abroad, that cannot be an economic strategy. In fact, that mango tree that Dismas was talking about, somebody should be able to ask, how can I convert this mango? How can I create mango juice? How can I do value addition and export mango juice to the Middle East? That's the innovative thing that our curriculum, I don't know whether our curriculum is helping us think out of the box, but we have to go back to what our anthem said, that plenty be found within our borders, not plenty be found within other borders. So I think that we need to have that mindset shift. Otherwise, we'll be constantly looking for jobs abroad when we have all the factors of production. You have land, you have labor, you have the smartest people.
Ken, where are we, by the way, when it comes to unemployment in the country? Paint a picture for us. I'll begin with you, Dismas. Where are we? As much as we're talking about international markets and placing Kenyans there to get jobs because we're having the high unemployment in the country, what does the country look like right now as far as unemployment is concerned?
Kenya is a victim of its own success. You remember right from President Moi, when he took a deliberate move to expand university education in Kenya. And as of the last count, I think we've got about 100 universities producing all manner of graduates in different fields, top talents. So you've got top talents coming to the market every year, but they cannot be absorbed. And that is why he said that a responsible state must, first of all, endeavor to create opportunities locally. So ensure that you come up with these policy incentives to create opportunities locally. But in the event that you don't have maybe sufficient foreign direct investment coming to Kenya, or in the event that you are unable to grow your international markets to create the environment for local employment so that all your graduates, everybody coming to the market works within the nation, then the second step is to create those to create an opportunity for them to go and work outside the nation. Not long ago, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, made an announcement that now we've hit 1 trillion in terms of the resources coming from the foreign remittances. And other countries like the Philippines have really gone the extra mile, and people are making money. So I don't understand this insatiable fixation that employment must only be created in Kenya. If for some reason you're not able to harness the factors and create opportunities in Kenya, create the opportunities outside Kenya, then people can go and take advantage. Because here locally, again, we said you're opening a Pandora's box. How come Kenya has been losing its position, from a competitive position? There were some manufacturing concerns which were located in Kenya. Some of them have gone to a country called Zimbabwe. We're talking about Zimbabwe, and others have gone to Egypt. It's because one can easily argue that the cost of production in Kenya is much higher compared to other parts of Africa. Although I don't have the figures from the top of my head, but I know the cost of electricity in Kenya cannot be compared to Egypt and Zimbabwe, or even Ethiopia. Now, as you try to reduce the cost of production in Kenya and make Kenya a low-cost market in terms of production, you're not going to tell somebody to sit under a mango tree for the next 5 years and wait for you to come up with all these policy interventions before you can make Kenya become very competitive. And the danger with statistics, when Ken talks about it's only 1% who will get these high-profile jobs, this 1% could actually be 10,000. So you've got a software engineer in Kenya who has joined Microsoft, and one person will cause a huge difference. Now, if you're working as a housemaid in Kenya, for conversation purposes, you're being paid an equivalent of 10,000 in Kenya. You go to another jurisdiction, you're paid an equivalent of 100,000 in Kenya. So if you're able to send an equivalent of 30,000 to Kenya every month, that is money you can use to set up a business in Kenya. And I'm not suggesting that when you get these international jobs, especially the ones which are not 1%, then you say, Hail Mary, Eureka, I've made it. No. You go there with a plan. You say, I'm going to work for 5 years. I'm going to work for 10 years. I'm going to make some savings. When I've got some sufficient savings, I go back home. I come from a county in the past that had the highest concentration of Western Union outlets before we got M-Pesa and associated products in Kenya. Why? People from my village used to live for US in truckloads. And when you go to the community then, you would see any permanent structure you'd see around, their daughter or son was in the US. Most people want matatus, their sons or daughters who are in the US, because they knew they're going to the US, they're not going by the beach, they're going to work hard so that they can send resources back home. So again, it depends on the mindset. Ken and I have had these conversations for hours on end where we differ on this position, that it's not, it doesn't make even economic sense that you are an architect in Kenya. No, that may not be a good example. You're a graduate of Egerton, maybe you know something about bee farming, and then you just come to Nairobi selling githeri, while there's a good job in Botswana, and Botswana is in need of that talent, or Rwanda needs ICT talent. So you cannot just sit back and say, wait a minute, I'm waiting for Ruto to create a job for me in Nairobi, so I'm just going to wait for another 5 years. No, before you know, you'll be 65, and the market will no longer need you.
I just want to hear from you, Ken, so that we can also close this conversation on unemployment. I tend to ask the question, why has it been, or rather, why has it appeared to be so difficult for the administration we have right now? And probably some previous administrations have had the same issue. But what is really the key issue when it comes to creation of jobs, job opportunities in this country? Is it an issue of misappropriation of funds that could be channeled into projects that can create jobs for the youth especially? Ken, what do you think?
Can you allow me before Ken comes in? This unemployment is not just limited to Kenya. It's a global thing. Wherever there's an election anywhere, everybody's struggling with unemployment. And even in Tanzania, the president has now formed a fully-fledged ministry to address youth unemployment. So a docket on its own to address youth unemployment. So it's not as if that the entire world has addressed unemployment and wealth creation, that it's only Kenya which stands out with this challenge.
I've just remembered something. Sorry, Ken, just before you go. You know, you do realize some of the key things we've been seeing happening globally. We've seen the US, there's been a lot of, so to speak, violence on immigrants, Some of them, perhaps the issue is paperwork. But the feeling you get when you look globally, you're seeing some of these countries also are, so to speak, tired of supporting countries from the African region, or maybe just third world countries, because the idea is we got ourselves where we are as a global, a foreign country. How about the African countries also try to get themselves to where we are? And so there's also that fatigue you're seeing internationally, perhaps, and that's where you're seeing all these stories flaring across, and you're seeing stories from the UK, stories from the US, and the feeling is that those economies are also struggling to take care of their own citizens. Ken, what do you think about this?
Well, Leah, I would like to say that in economics, unemployment is catered for in monetary policy. So the chief reason why we have high unemployment is because we have a broken monetary policy that does not allow for enough cash circulation. It's important that every country has enough cash circulation so that business people can actually create more businesses, knowing that their customers have purchasing power. The challenge we have today in Kenya is we've crowded out the private sector, so a lot of money is not in circulation. Therefore, even the purchasing power of citizens is very low. And who can start a business in an economy with low purchasing power? In fact, just a few days ago, one of the leading CEOs of the leading bank in Kenya was actually asking Kenyans to come and borrow money from the bank so they can do business, because Kenyans are not going to banks anymore to get credit because interest rates are too high. But more importantly, they know even if they set up that restaurant, the people don't have the purchasing power to support that restaurant. It's all about money supply, money circulation. Once you have good money circulation, jobs are created, businesses expand, and when they expand, they have to hire a new talent into the market. So it has to go back to the central bank and really the conduct of our monetary policy.
Just moving away from that, the heavy taxation that Kenyans are faced with, literally Kenyans are crying. You go to the streets and people look angry. Protests, we've seen protests coming up almost every other time within this country because Kenyans feel tired. Do you think perhaps, given the situation and some of the things we've mentioned today, do you foresee a chance that the president might come and announce more taxation on this country, Dismas?
Well, probability of him announcing more taxation today is zero, and I'm willing to bet my head on that. And the problem, as it were, really is not about taxation. It's how the resources are being spent after taxation. Like, for instance, again, we have to go to the best practices in the Nordic countries that have got some of the highest levels of taxation. But a taxpayer in Norway or Denmark will know that as soon as you meet your tax obligations, and some countries are as high as 60%, but they know the moment you are a taxpayer and you paid your tax, then all the public goods are going to be provided in total 100%. That if you fall ill, you're going to be taken care of. You're going to be given via pension. It's in those parts of the world that a citizen will go to the mountain and something happens, and the state will mobilize resources, including helicopters, to go and pick just one individual who has had a skiing, something has happened, and then, so they know that healthcare is taken 100%. So you don't need to pay for SHA or SHIF and then go to a private hospital. They know security is taken care of 100%. You don't need to pay the local estate security guys. They know that if it's garbage collection, taken care 100%. You don't need to pay private guys to come and collect garbage. If it's education, it's covered to the hilt. So citizens all over the world have no problem paying high taxes if the taxation resources are used for their needs. So that if it's education, you're going all the way to the university without teachers. But part of the reason why people in the third world are unhappy to pay taxes is all of a sudden elected leaders display obscene opulence. I mean, you may have seen how our MCAs behave. You may have seen our MPs behave. And you may have seen how people have been given responsibility over our resources, the way they misuse them. We've said these times above number that it's only in Kenya, where somebody who cannot afford a cup of tea at a 5-star hotel today becomes an MCA and can buy the 5-star hotel after 3 months of being in office, only in Kenya. Now one wonders, if you've got this IQ of multiplying resources after you win an election, how come you don't use it for the entire nation? You may have seen a few days ago when some people who were serving in the cabinet were fired, and then they got new roles in the diplomatic circle. When they were undergoing vetting, the obscene growth of their wealth was very shocking. I mean, some people even had 100%, 200%, 300%. And when they were questioned by members of the National Assembly how they managed to accumulate their wealth, nobody had an answer. It's only in Kenya where we say that you want to make money without harnessing the factors of production. Now, when that comes to mind, then people say, wait a minute. So if I'm going to sweat and pay tax, and the elected leaders as well as public servants of rank are going to misuse it, even me, I've got a capacity to misuse my own money. So why should I go work hard, give you resources, and you keep on upgrading your cars every day?
So basically, if the taxation was translating to improved living standards, you know, more job creation, then it would make sense for Kenyans. Ken, do you think perhaps there will be news of more taxation? Dismas says definitely not, and he's putting a bet on it. Would you bet on it as well and say possibly no taxation announcements today?
I don't think there'll be any announcement on that, but that is the direction we need to go to, because as I said, if you look at somebody earning 30,000 shillings and you deduct affordable housing, you deduct the SHA, I mean, they are left with very little in a very expensive city. Nairobi is one of the most expensive cities in Africa. So it goes back to the issue of how are taxes reducing our purchasing power? Because there's some things that you're able to do for yourself. Now the government wants to deduct to do it for you. If you think about housing, for example, a lot of people have been saying, give us good quality jobs and we'll be able to build our own houses. In fact, housing is actually a devolved function of counties. It's not even a national function. So I think it's the lack of order in both our fiscal policy and our monetary policy. And that's what we are hoping to hear today, that there'll be specific and very specific targeted measures on curing the issues we are seeing in Kenya. Because if you don't go the right direction, you're going to have a massive, massive problem with unemployment.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want us to cross over to Ken Gashuri, who is in Nakuru County. Of course, we want to hear from Kenyans what they think about the current state of the nation. And I don't know if Ken Gashuri can hear me, but let's just cross over to Ken Gashuri, who is in Nakuru County, and listen in on what some of the residents there have to say in their expectations today.
Thank you very much, Leah. Indeed, we are coming to you live from here in Nakuru, where the residents are very upbeat about what the president is going to say during his State of the Nation address, which will be happening in Parliament in a joint sitting between the National Assembly and the Senate. And here with me are some of Nakuru residents who can tell us maybe what do you expect from the president, and maybe which sector do you think has done well, which sector do you think has done poorly?
Kwa majina naitwa Simon Sangale Olenasieku. Mimi ni mwenyekiti ya wafanyabiashara ndogo ndogo kaunti ya Nakuru. Siku ya leo mimi sioni kama kutakuwa na mambo mabadilika, kwa sababu hii ndio mara ya tatu tunaona rais akienda katika State of the Nation address. Na kile ambacho ningependa kusema ni kwamba mimi nasikitika sana, kwa sababu tuliona kwamba kuna mambo mengi ambapo alipokuwa anachaguliwa alisema kwamba atatimiza. Mimi nilikuwa katika kampeni yake ya urais ya UDA, na tuliambiwa kwamba mambo kama vile ya kupigana na ufisadi, na tunaona sasa hivi ufisadi umekithiri mizizi katika taifa la Kenya. Alisema kwamba ataboresha mambo ya elimu. Tunaona sasa mambo ya education sasa sio free tena. Kulikuwa na free primary, free secondary, university, kulikuwa na ile mambo ya nini help ilikuwa mzuri. Hiyo zote ameharibu. Kulikuwa na mambo pia ya afya. Tulikuwa tumeambiwa kwamba katika enzi yake kutakuwa na mambo ya afya, hata matibabu itakuwa ni bure. Sasa hivi tunaona hii mambo ya SHA imekuwa ni a scam. Atafadhali siku ya leo tusikie rais akisema kwamba anarudisha NHIF, kwa sababu tulikuwa na linda mama, hiyo iliisha. Tulikuwa na edu afya, hiyo iliisha. Sasa hivi tunaona watu wengi wanalipa SHA lakini hawapati matibabu ile inafaa. Mimi ningependa kuambia rais ni kwamba Wakenya wamechoka. Pia last year tuliona ile mambo ilifanyika. Kulikuwa na mambo ya extrajudicial killings na abductions. Hajatuambia paka saa hii wale watoto walipotea walienda wapi na wako wapi. Hatujajua wale waliuliwa ni jinsi ambavyo wazazi wao watapanguzwa machozi kwa njia gani. Kwa hivyo rais, uko na kibarua kikubwa sana. Wewe mwenyewe pia katika hali ya kuongoza taifa la Kenya, tumeona hivi karibuni kile ambacho ungependa kuambia Wakenya, upunguze tia matusi. Umekuwa ukiita Wakenya wapumbavu, umewaambia kwamba hawana akili. Pia tuliona hivi juzi ukisema kwamba hatutaki mvua, tunataka maji, hatutaki akili, tunataka kichwa. Matamshi kama hayo kama rais yameanza kufanya kwamba hii position ya presidency umeiweka chini sana. Mimi ningependa kusema hivi kama mwananchi wa Nakuru ya kwamba watu wa Kenya kwa miaka mitatu imekuwa ni kulia na kusiaga meno. Tuliahidiwa mbinguni, lakini sasa ni kama tunaishi katika ahera. Na sisi tunakuambia rais, tafadhali, hata uende siku ya leo utoe ahadi za uongo. Kwa maana ahadi zako zinakuwa ni ahadi moja baada ya ahadi nyingine za uongo. Ni kama kwamba zile ahadi zilikuwa kuanzia Genesis hadi Revelation, promises. Afadhali za Mungu huwa zinatimia kidogo, lakini zinatimia, lakini zako ni ahadi baada ya ahadi. Kwa hivyo mimi kama mkazi wa Nakuru nimekasirishwa sana na huyu rais wetu William Ruto ambaye nilikuwa nimemchagua, na baada ya miaka mitatu kuangalia performance yake kama headmaster, anaangalia performance ya wanafunzi kwa mia, naweza mpatia 10%. Na ninasema kwa sababu ni 10%, wewe ni rais ya one term.
Thank you very much. Those are the views of one of the residents here. Maybe tell us what are your expectations, and maybe what do you think the nation, is it on the right trajectory?
Thank you. My name is Assumpta Wagoi wa Muiruri, kiongozi katika Nakuru County and aspiring women representative 2027. Mimi ninapenda kusema ya kwamba hii maneno ya the president kukujaga hapa kutubia kila wakati, sisi wa Kenya tushachoka, kwa sababu hata amezoea hotuba anatoa kila siku juu ya gari. Kwa hivyo hatuoni hii anaenda kwa bunge ni gani. Na ningependa kusema mimi nitapick sekta ya elimu. The president kama anaenda ku address the Republic of Kenya, tell us ulifikiria aje na ulifika aje ati umalize masomo ya bure ya day schools in the Republic of Kenya. Hiyo masomo ya bure ni ya mzazi mwenye hawezi kulipia mtoto wake boarding. Hiyo masomo ya bure ya